Thank you. It's an honor to be invited by UNESCO and the city of Hangzhou for this important conference. Let me just first extend my regret for those who wanted to see Tom Main. He was with me in Shenzhen, and 4 hours later he had to return on a family emergency. So my apologies. Today I will present basically some choice projects from the Now Institute. We're basically a 10-year-old institute made by the Chancellor of UCLA to engage urban issues that are confronting issues that actually confront America first, and then by extension the world. For us, culture is not static. It evolves to reflect the changing nature of its constituent society. Recognition of cultural artifact for us is evidence of the progression of culture itself, and I think that's for us is a key status. As mentioned before, for us, the relevancy of culture relies on its identity. I think in some circles it is somewhat divisive in terms of possibly class profiles in terms of the arts, but for us, the notion of identity as a mode of differentiation in the world makes culture a necessity rather than an indulgence in the way that we approach planning. I represent basically 2 institutions. One is the Now Institute, and on the professional side is Morphosis Architects. And the Now Institute has been engaged with different government entities across the world. One of the projects that we engaged in back in around 5 years ago was when Katrina hit New Orleans. And when Katrina hit New Orleans, we began a deep research into the origins of the legacy of natural disasters hitting New Orleans. And we found out that, of course, a hurricane hits New Orleans every 3 years. And by actually physically mapping and constructing a visual argument and a visual research of the issues that are facing New Orleans in terms of planning and ecological and environmental concerns, we were able to work together with the city of New Orleans to locate a sustainable planning approach that would actually give them a roadmap to a potential development model. Our model was actually rather controversial because we asked for a reduction of New Orleans as a way of making it sustainable. 80% of New Orleans was covered in water. And for us, it actually made no sense that you would actually spend more money creating artificial levees when you could actually put the same amount of money on a much more dense, intelligent planning model. And so for us, on the left-hand side, we would actually concentrate New Orleans on the gray area, put it on the high ground, where 95% of the city would remain on the grid. For the remaining 5% that still, for legacy issues, would decide to live on the low grounds, we began to go from the macro scale to a micro scale of understanding the actual cultural legacy of New Orleans, which actually resides in the Shotgun House. And by actually appropriating the cultural legacy of the Shotgun House, but then actually advancing it with contemporary technology, we would actually make a Noah's Ark. And the Noah's Ark actually relied on a house that would actually be off the grid and that would actually sustain itself for 21 days on water without its connection to the city in the event of another hurricane, which will come at 2.5 years. And so we took the cultural and social aspect of the Shotgun House and actually made it into a much more of a contemporary model as an investigation with the city. And we actually fabricated this and made it, shipped it across the United States, and actually now understood it as a working prototype. This was seen as an investigative tool into the technology, to the convergence of contemporary technology with local cultural intelligence and residential domestic lifestyle. And with this, we began to now still to locate it in different grounds. 2 years ago, Tom Main is the architect and urban designer for President Obama's Committee on the Arts and Humanities. And with the administration, we were tasked to look at 8 American cities that was dying because their manufacturing historical base have gone overseas here. And so these cities that number about 500,000 people were tasked to be under review to see if actually culture can actually come back and revitalize the cities. And depending on where the cities are, of course, the notion of culture would all be different. But we began to actually ask the administration at a policy level the issues facing the United States. So if you look at this graph here, the United States is ranked 11th in the world in terms of expenditures of federal funding to the arts. At the top is France. France probably has the most incredible and healthy program of art and cultural support. Denmark probably has the greatest percentage of the per capita in terms of support, but the United States right now ranks really low. We only have 4% of philanthropic funding that actually goes to the arts, culture, and the humanities. And a sad case is in 2011, 3 million, only 3 million was actually accorded to all the mayors in the United States. So 3 million divided by 25 cities generated only about $100,000, even for the city of LA, to actually initiate some sort of a cultural art. $100,000 does nothing in cities like New York and Los Angeles. So this is actually a very, very sad condition. These 4 dots represent proportionally the amount of funding that the United States government gives to different entities. The DOT is the Department of Transportation, HUD is Housing and Urban Development. The NEA, the National Endowment for the Arts, is a tiny little speck that you can't even see on this proportional graph until you zoom in. That is actually the proportional dot of the NEA funding. And so what we proposed to President Obama was actually a very simple convergence where these 4 entities are actually stitched strategically through the thread of culture. Now, culture in a much broader term beyond just simply arts, but it has to do with a creative, innovative, and an identity-driven initiative. And so we began to look at cities. I'm going to give you one very quick example. We looked at this city of Tucson, which is ranked 32nd. A very surprising thing was that 7 out of the 10 largest United States cities are in the Southwest, and they will be actually the future engine of the United States. So we looked at Tucson. We looked at 2% of the Southwest land area in terms of basically energy efficient solar power can actually generate enough power for the United States. Now I know this is actually wishful thinking, but it actually allows you to kind of locate a broader, sustainable urban strategy for the country. So 350 days out of 356 is the sunny days in Tucson. So with that, we began to speculate. Now do not misread this. This is not an urban design. This is just speculative in terms of the impact, in terms of quantity and quality, qualitative and quantitative information on what needs to be impacted upon the actual fabric of the city. And how in phase 1 in 2020, you would actually have that much generation, and in 2040, the city of Tucson can potentially be an energy exporter. So these series of basically strategies have been mapped out across 8 cities for the Obama administration. Now, let me switch into culture and urbanism. We began by understanding that the city is never static. The contemporary city is dynamic, unstable, and increasingly difficult to trace as a linear process. Now, the key in this sentence is a linear process. We can understand it as a multivariate, multinodal network of different strategic values. So the origins of the Now Institute actually began with this, with LA Now, when at the turn of the century, we were tasked to make an illustrative almanac and a print of where LA was. And it really began everything from understanding the real map of LA, not just the legal boundary of LA, and understanding the population, the typical demographics that everybody in this room are very familiar with, who owns LA at the turn of the century, to understanding that the ecological footprint of LA is the same as the ecological footprint of the entire country of Peru, and understanding the demographics, the diversity in terms of cultural and the ethnic fabric that makes up LA. And with this broad kind of demographic understanding, we tried to conjoin with the built environment, the natural environment, and infrastructural systems to start making large, broader speculative projects on behalf of the city of LA. And by doing that, such as this, which is to revitalize the so-called LA River, which is actually the world's largest drainage ditch. We began to understand and instigate a broader program of engaging the public. This is not by any means, what the final solution is, but this is actually a visual way of us conjoining all our issues together. And so we did the same thing for Madrid. I have 1 minute, so forgive me, I'm just going to go through this. Where the city of Madrid asked us to look at preserving the core of the city. And now we are finally into Haiti, where for us, the first job of us is to understand the local culture and the legacy of Haiti, to understand and to actually be empathetic and sympathetic, and to actually use our Haitian partners to locate local intelligence. And for us, the cultural zeitgeist of Haiti, for us, is a catalyst for any future planning, because that is where identity and desires and aspirations are going to be located. And once you have desires and aspirations, you begin to actually make connections. And once you have those connections, then you actually have a framework where it actually brings all different constituencies, from the grandmothers in the villages to basically policymakers in the country, to all kind of come together and understand it as one singular totality that will differentiate their own desires under the rubric of the national needs. And so these are pages from this book where we are simply interrogating some of the issues facing Haiti, because we do not want to make or inspire anything that is artificial or imported. We are defined by locating local partners in what we do as in terms of our projects. So I think I'm getting the little signal here. So with that in mind, I give you Cap-Haitian, where hopefully this is where our next project will be located in terms of preserving the original downtown, but reference against the ecological revitalization of this river. And we believe that in the end, this is what I'm going to strive for. So with that, thank you.